The period of European history extending from about 500 to 1500 CE is traditionally known as the Middle Ages. The term was first used by the 15th century scholars to designate the period between their own time and the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The period is often considered to have its own internal divisions, either early and late or high and late. However, medieval life was in a time characterized by immense changes in social, economic, and political systems. The era was marked by the rise of Christianity, feudalism, and the spread of trade and commerce. During this time, Europe saw the emergence of great empires, significant scientific advancements, and the development of new art and literature forms. The medieval period played a crucial role in shaping the modern world and continues to fascinate historians and enthusiasts to this day. Come with me as we journey back in time to what real life was like for people in the Middle Ages. In this video, I will be discussing top 5 activities that these people living back then faced during the Middle Ages. Before I continue, I would love you to subscribe to my channel to help this video spread. First on the list, the lasses had bloody periods. In medieval Europe, menstruation was connected to hormonal theory. The belief that the body is made up of 4 hormones or fluids, one of which was blood. So back then, if you had too much one of these fluids, early Western medicine believed it leads to diseases. Bloodletting was a common cure for a variety of diseases back then, and an attempt to get rid of the body's fluid back in balance is by getting rid of excess blood. So menstruation, which is the monthly release of excess blood, was considered a sign of illness. Therefore, everyone who had a period was in some way diseased. Many believed that anyone who was currently menstruating could make people near them sick, and menstrual period itself was believed to dull mirrors and kill crops. Most people with periods use cloth rags as a kind of DIY sanitary pad. Linen was a particularly good material for that purpose, but there's also evidence that some people use a particularly absorbent type of bog moss. The slightly less upsetting news is that in the Middle Ages, people had fewer and lighter periods. This is because of more frequent childbearing. Religious shame caused people to go to great lengths to hide their periods, and even believed that cramps were a divine punishment of Eve's original sin. Since cramps were seen as a particular punishment, people who were menstruating were offered pain relief medicine, which was mostly herbal. In an effort to ease some of the pain, people believed that burning a toad or wearing the ashes in a pouch around your waist would cure cramps. What an emotional and psychological torture for women back then living in the Middle Ages. Second on the list, law and order in medieval society. In the medieval period, there was no organized police force, and most law enforcement were organized by local people. In some areas, every male over the age of 12 had to join a group called a Titan, and they had to make sure no one else in the group committed a crime. If someone was the victim of a crime, they had to raise a hue and cry, meaning other villagers had to come to help find the criminal. Some areas had watchmen or constables who would patrol the area to prevent crimes. Most minor cases were dealt with by the local lords. A judge who was appointed by the king traveled to each country to deal with serious crimes. If a jury couldn't decide if a person was innocent or guilty, there was the option of trial by ordeal. This is where people were subjected to painful tasks such as working on hot coals, putting hands in boiling water to retrieve hot stones, holding a red-hot iron. If your wounds healed cleanly after 3 days, then you were considered to be innocent in the eyes of God. If not, you were considered guilty and would be punished accordingly. Punishment including being put on the stocks, fines, or even death for more serious offenses. Third on the list, peasant life. Medieval villages consisted mostly of peasant farmers, with the structures comprised of houses, barns, sheds, and animal pens clustered around the center of the village. Beyond this, the village was surrounded by plowed fields and pastures. For peasants, daily medieval life revolved around an agrarian calendar, with the majority of time spent working the land and trying to grow enough food for the next season. Church feasts marked the sowing and reaping days and occasions when peasants and lord could rest from their labors. Peasants that lived on a manor by the castle were assigned strips of land to plant and harvest. They particularly planted rye, oats, peas, barley, and harvested crops with a scythe, sickle, or reaper. Each peasant family had its own strip of land. However, when not working on their individual lands, the peasants worked cooperatively on tasks such as plowing, haying, building roads, clearing forests, and working on other tasks as determined by the Lord. The houses of medieval peasants were of poor quality compared to modern houses. The floor was normally earthen and there was very little ventilation and few sources of light in the form of windows. In addition to human inhabitants, a number of livestock animals would also reside in the house. Towards the end of the medieval period, however, conditions generally improved. Peasant houses became larger in size and it became more common to have 2 rooms and even a second floor. Peasant farmers usually ate warm porridges made of wheat, oats, and barley. Broths, stews, vegetables, and bread were also part of peasants' diets. Peasants rarely ate meat. When they did, it was their own animals that were saved for the winter. Peasants drank wine and ale and never water. Fourth on the list, children in the Middle Ages. For most children growing up in medieval England, the first year of life was one of the most dangerous, with as many as 50% of children succumbing to fatal illness during that year. Moreover, 20% of women died in childbirth. During that first year of life, children were cared for and nursed, either by parents if the family belonged to a peasant class, or perhaps by a wet nurse if the family belonged to a noble class. By age 12, a child began to take on a more serious role in the family. Although, according to canon laws, girls could marry at the age of 12, this was relatively uncommon unless a child was an heiress or belonged to a family of noble birth. Peasant children at this age stayed at home and continued to learn and develop domestic skills and husbandry. Urban children moved out of their homes and into homes of their employer or master, depending on their future roles as servants or apprentices. Noble boys learned skills in arms, and noble girls learned basic domestic skills. The end of childhood and entrance into adolescence was marked by leaving home and moving to the house of the employer or master, entering a university or entering church services. Fifth on the list, women in the Middle Ages. Women in the Middle Ages were officially required to be subordinate to some male, whether their father, husband, or other kinsmen. Widows who were often allowed to have some control over their own lives were still restricted legally. Three main activities performed by peasant men and women were planting food, keeping livestock, and making textiles, as shown in this video by salters from southern Germany and England. Women of different classes perform different activities. Rich urban women could be merchants like their husbands or even became moneylenders, and middle-class women worked in the textiles, innkeeping, shopkeeping, and brewing industry. Township women, like peasant women, were responsible for the household and could also engage in trade. Poorer women often peddled and hawked food and other merchandise in the marketplaces or worked in richer households as domestic servants, day laborers, or laundresses. There is evidence that women performed not only housekeeping responsibilities like cooking and cleaning, but even other household activities like grinding, brewing, butchering, and spinning produced items like flour, ale, wheat, cheese, and textiles for direct consumption and for sale. Noble women were responsible for running a household and could occasionally be expected to handle estates in the absence of their male relatives. But they were also restricted from participation in military or government affairs. The only role open to women was in the church was as a nun, and they were unable to become priests.